Well, a mega welcome to everybody. This is Fadi, and I want to, welcome you for joining us in a special live stream today with a dear brother. And you are going to really enjoy not only his personality and the knowledge that he'll bring, but also the topics that typically we discuss are unique. And that's what I love about our dear brother, Vocab Malone. Who, by the way, goes by Backpack Radio, goes by the Urban Apologist, goes by the Street Apologist. Is there anything else I left out, Vocab, that you go by?
I go by guy who likes comic books but needs to hit the gym too.
There you go, man. But folks, you don't have Sam Shimon here. You got better. You don't have David Wood. You got better. You got a rapper who is going to rap things for us too. With
That's
that in
true.
mind,
I'm not that nice, Alfadi, but compared to those guys, I am the nicest guy you've ever met.
I hear you, bro. I hear you. If you watched Sam Shamon's show yesterday, I had to turn it off because he was just going, off on one person that was annoying him the whole time. But hey, Lord bless him. He knows how to do it. With that in mind, brother, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for everyone who is joining us right now. And look, Vocab Malone himself is also, commenting. Well, that's amazing, really. And I want to thank also the moderators, brother. The topic today was a topic that you mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago when we talked by phone, and I really liked it. And then little than you, that something in the news is going to happen that connects to it as well. And that's the topic of the Nation of Islam. So why don't you go ahead, first of all, if anyone is living under the rock and doesn't know who you are, just go ahead and give them the 1 minute, quickie about you and how they can connect with you.
My name is Vocab, and I do specialized contextualized apologetics. So I deal with some mainstream stuff like Islam especially and atheism. But a lot of things I focus a lot on are lesser known issues. So Nation of Islam is one of them, the 5%ers to a certain extent. And of course, the big one that people might know me from is Hebrew Israelism, sometimes called Black Israelism. Those are some of the main things. And I love doing apologetics. I work a job. I try to take care of the kids, and the dog who's kind of snoring loud. You might be able to hear him. He's at my feet. And then I jump online and do awesome shows with folks like you. I love just kind of the fellowship of the apologetics world. And last thing I'll say is I'm working on a second book, slowly, surely, called Apologetics in Context. But man, it's taken forever, but I am working on it.
Yes, and definitely I would love to have you back again in our segment, Books and Authors, to talk just about that book. And I love the flavor behind it as well. So we may even use it in a couple of shows to discuss your approach. With that in mind, brother, why don't you just help our viewers to walk us through a journey concerning what do we mean by the Nation of Islam? And here's what I mean. Sometimes people really think Nation of Islam and Islam and one and the same. They teach everything the same. There is always, common grounds between them without a doubt, but they assume we're talking about the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. It's funny about that, Al-Fadi, while I'm getting my books ready here, is that my first kind of real more saturated exposure to Islam was not actually Orthodox Islam. My first sort of saturated exposure was more Nation of Islam and people who had actually been influenced by 5% style Nation of Islam, which was not even really part of the Nation of Islam. It's a break off. They call themselves the Nation of the Gods and Earths, which we won't have time to talk about today. But that was my first exposure. And for a while, till I really learned, I thought that was Islam. Because that was my first exposure. I thought Nation of Islam was Islam. It was a while before I understood, oh, wait a minute, that's an unorthodox sect by Islamic standards. And I had to play catch up. This is when I was younger. And it's because of the kind of people I was around and where I was and stuff. And also the era, the Nation of Islam was really strong, especially in hip hop culture at that time. And so I always had an interest, and there's just tons of mystery surrounding the Nation of Islam and the ins and outs of it. And I think that's still the case, but a lot more I think is known now than was probably known back then. And we can have, I think, a honest, frank, and even charitable discussion about their beliefs and history. And that's what we're going to try to do today.
Wonderful, wonderful. I know you have a presentation that you have prepared and you wish to share. If you are ready to start, by all means. Otherwise, if you still want to give any backgrounds behind this, it's up to you, brother.
Well, one thing, I'm going to show something to the audience here. This is called The Final Call. Now, this is an older one. Obviously, you can tell I got mine all beat up. This is a paper published by the nation itself. They have their own printing press there in the south side of Chicago, which I have seen. I have some friends in the south side of Chicago and did kind of a little tour, if you will. And I don't mean a tour of the facility, I mean a tour of seeing where all the structures were. And it's not as common sight, and it's not all over Phoenix, if we talk specifically about Phoenix here. But you'll see a guy maybe in a gray kind of jacket or suit, coat, pants, and then maybe a red bow tie, maybe glasses somewhat similar to mine, something like that. Be on the corner, and they used to sell bean pies, but that's not as common, it doesn't seem. But sometimes they'll be selling The Final Call, which is their paper, and they still publish it themselves and all that. And in every one, they have news and updates and stuff and advertisements, but they also always include the what we want, what we want and what we believe. So like at the end here. And the reason why I say that is towards the end, now you can find this online as well, but some of the stuff we're going to get into for beliefs, some of it will come out of here because that's their sort of official doctrinal statements, not that particular paper, every paper, and it's online as well. And then some other stuff is going to come out of this is probably the most important book to them besides the Bible and the Quran, which they don't even really use that much. Message to the Black Man in America. If you saw our Boom Boom Room skit where Muhammad meets a Nation of Islam member, this is the book he was holding, played by John McCrae. What do you mean? Very, very important book. Now, he published tons of books. Elijah Muhammad is the man I'm referring to. He was the one who kind of mentored not only Malcolm X, but later Farrakhan. And Farrakhan is now the leader of the Nation of Islam. This is a book put out by the NOI. That's how you abbreviate it here. And I picked this one up because it has intersecting interests for myself. Defending Farrakhan, the campaign to free the real children of Israel. There's a little bit of Hebrew Israelism actually present in Nation of Islam. Now, we're not going to talk about that. This is sort of a compendium, a collection of Final Call articles. I'm just trying to show you that I have some primary sources, then I have some digital stuff as well. Last thing I'll show is this. They don't use this as much anymore, but these are these kind of esoteric lessons that were supposedly given by the founder of Nation of Islam, Fard Muhammad, to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And they're very odd and esoteric. It's sort of a catechism almost. Mainly the 5%ers are the guys who use these nowadays. And again, we're not going to talk about them. The 5%ers, aka the nation of gods and earths, who are a break off from the Nation of Islam, which we'll be discussing today. And the Nation of Islam itself, it's kind of interesting. Is it a break off from the Black Christian church, or is it a break off from Islam? Honestly, it almost seems like the Black Christian church is more foundational to its essence than Islam, to be honest with you. And yet that has the name Nation of Islam. But we'll talk about that. And that's background I've got, unless you want to ask me anything there, brother, before we start.
No, that's a great background and a good place for us to maybe start with the basics about what is the Nation of Islam, when were they founded, who's behind it, and so on and so forth. Right. But I agree with you that according to mainstream Islam, orthodoxy, the Orthodox view of Islam, they are just an offshoot, a heresy, just like Ahmadiyya Islam and others as well.
Yes, but I'll mention briefly that has not stopped some Islamic countries from having cozy relationships with the Nation of Islam, sort of as a way to foster an intellectual kind of rebellious element within America. You've actually seen Farrakhan, again, the leader. He's 87 now, so he's the leader currently. There's been some dictators who had cozy relationships with the Nation of Islam, and it's an interesting thing to see that, even though they realize they're not Orthodox. All right, I'll hit share screen, brother.
There you go, man. Let's see if my training works.
All right, there's that. And
there you go. I'll have it on. There you go.
Awesome. Okay. Let's do kind of a basic apologetics intro. I created this for some presentations I did at some apologetics conference is actually in Detroit, ironically enough. And I bring that up because in July of 1930, that is where the Nation of Islam counts its beginning. On the screen, you can see the three main men who are essential to understanding the Nation of Islam. You have Fard Muhammad, the man reading the open book. You have Elijah Muhammad. In one picture, he has a hat. The other, he doesn't. And then Louis Farrakhan, the current leader, and he looks a little bit older these days. Let's read from where their We Believe section. This is point 12. We believe. Now, listen to this, Al Fadi, because you're going to realize how unbelievably un-Islamic this is. Listen to this closely. We believe that Allah, God, appeared in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, July 1930, the long-awaited Messiah of the Christians and the Mahdi of the Muslims. We believe further and lastly that Allah is God, and besides him there is no God, and he will bring about a universal government of peace wherein we can live in peace together. You want to comment on that, brother? I mean,
all I can think of is what Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also said about himself when it comes to Ahmadiyya Islam, the fact that he is the second coming of Christ. And it's just amazing how these movements share in a lot of stuff, basically.
Yeah, it's so just so everyone would know, Orthodox Islam would say this is shirk. You're saying Allah appeared in the person of someone. This is, remember, there's no Trinity in this version of Islam, in any version of Islam, of course, but in the Nation of Islam is not Trinitarian. In fact, actually, they're polytheistic. It's a long story. We're not going to get quite into that, but they're actually polytheistic. They're not even monotheists, sort of along the lines of Mormonism when you get into their kind of gods creating themselves kind of nonsense. But with that being said, the Muslim would see this nonetheless and say, this is shirk. This is maybe even worse than the Christians, because it's not sort of the second person, the Son of God. You have, so right away, the point is to understand how radically different. Now, of course, because it's different than Orthodox Islam doesn't make it wrong on its face value, right? But this is wrong because this man's not the Messiah. And it appears they kind of have multiple people they call Messiah, because it's not that they don't think Jesus was the Messiah, is my understanding, but yet they call this guy Messiah. So you see that immediately it denigrates the unique work of Jesus Christ. So now,
not only that, brother, I mean, he is the Messiah and he is the guided one, the Mahdi. So that in and of itself doesn't even work according to Sunni Islam or Shia Islam, because they are two distinct characters.
Yeah. And by the way, Al-Fadi, I know you just saw the guy on your screen, the guy who was reading the book, Fard Muhammad. That's the guy they're saying appeared, that the guy, that's who Allah appeared in the person of him. Does he even look black to you?
No, he does not.
No, he does not. He does not look. And guess what? He wasn't. He was not even black. Now, there's a lot of debate about his ethnic origin, but it appears that all answers have him, at least on one of his sides, having perhaps a Caucasian parent. Now, again, it's very, there's a lot of debate about this. And it's ironic that this religion that essentially teaches that white folks are devils, their founder is half a devil, basically. I mean, it's just contradictions. But he's not someone that if you saw walking down the street, you'd be like, oh, there's a money. And the indications maybe that he didn't have any sort of African origin at all. But there's a lot of debate. We'll skip that for now. But is it appear on the screen? Do I need to do something? Or
I will make it appear, because I hold the key to these things, brother.
You hold the key. All right, the key is in your hand.
So it's right here. So what are the basics?
All right, so we're going to go over some basics to know. Not all the basics of the belief, the basics of things you need to know. As already discussed, the founder of the Nation of Islam is Wallace D. Fard. Now, he's an interesting character shrouded in mystery. He was some sort of a rug and silk salesman, and no one knows exactly when he got here, where he came. There's a lot of mystery surrounding him. But what he did apparently is to make the wares that he would sell more appealing, because he mainly went to black neighborhoods in Detroit, middle class neighborhoods and things like that. He would attach a story to it. And so he would tell people in their living rooms, this is the kind of rug that our forefathers used. And he would have these mythologies about the items he would sell. And apparently what happened is, over time, people became more interested in these stories he was telling about the items. So again, I view him as a Joseph Smith kind of character who was like, oh, well, this seems to be working better, because Joseph Smith couldn't find gold very well. So he kind of invented a religion. And so Wallace D. Fard kind of made these things up and developed a whole backstory. Black Americans are from the lost tribe of Shabazz from Saudi Arabia, and this whole kind of story. And he quickly disappeared, though, after a number of years. And then you had Elijah Muhammad took over. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's a very fascinating origin story. It gets shrouded in mystery. If a Nation of Islam member watches this, they probably would want to dispute some of the things I say. But notice I'm staying away from the extremely controversial stuff. Like you'll hear often, sometimes people talk about Fard. They'll say, well, he was imprisoned in I think it was San Quentin or Alcatraz. Now I just forgot. I believe it's San Quentin. But that's debatable. So I'm not saying that's a fact. You see, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying the things I think we really know. Now, the headquarters of the Nation of Islam, though, is not in Detroit, because they started having some trouble in Detroit. Remember, this is the 1930s. So this is pre-civil rights America. This is whatever problems we have now today. It was not easy, especially then, to be a black person in the United States of America, even living in the North. So out of out of Detroit and into Chicago, and that's the HQ of the NOI still today. It's called Mosque Merrim, and it's in Chicago, and I think it's Mosque number 2. They give them a number based upon when they were founded. Of course, the first mosque is in Detroit, and that's I already mentioned that several times. There's the date, July 4th, 1930. Now, this is the period most people know about, 1964 to 1978, because what they know, well, that's Malcolm X, that's Muhammad Ali, that's assassinations. All kinds of stuff happened in between that little dash. For example, Malcolm X is kicked out of the Nation of Islam in 1964, and he had been already silenced prior to that because he made comments that indicated JFK's assassination was sort of what America deserved, and that was too radical for even Elijah Muhammad. So he silenced Malcolm X, and then eventually Malcolm X left. The ban was really never lifted, and then he started his own thing, which started to look a little bit more like Orthodox Islam and had a more universalistic view of peoples and whatnot. It was after he took a trip to the Hajj, apparently, he went to Mecca and all that. And then he was assassinated a year later, and it was a tragic thing. And it all the evidence, I mean, when I say all the evidence, I mean really all the evidence. There are conspiracy theories. All the evidence points that this was done by Nation of Islam members. Now, were the police complicit in maybe having lax security and getting slow to the scene, things like that? Yes. But the actual assassination is by Nation of Islam members. And it appears they're acting on their own. And in fact, even though it doesn't appear they had orders from on high, so to speak, what I mean is by Elijah Muhammad himself or anything like that, it appears there was sort of implicit encouragement for this kind of action to happen at this time. So the Nation of Islam went through a very, very wild time in that era. And then you have I believe it was 1974 or around then or so, Elijah Muhammad dies, right? And his son takes over, and his son changes the name of the organization and starts teaching Sunni Islam. He just rearranges everything. And for a few years, Farrakhan, who was kind of the number 2 guy in the organization, but wasn't related to Elijah Muhammad, so he's passed over for leadership, he couldn't take it anymore. So he left and re-established the Nation of Islam. Technically, the Nation of Islam that you see today is actually a new organization that comes out of Farrakhan not liking what Warith, that's his name, did in the transition. But that's the person who Elijah Muhammad chose to be the successor, not Farrakhan. And one big change that came when Warith rearranged everything and turned it into Sunni, and by the way, they still exist today. One of the big things he dropped was what some people have heard about. We're not going to get too deep into it because it's not even all that important. It's just bizarre. Is the origin story of white people, which has to do with a big-headed scientist named Yaqub, and he dropped that as a myth, as well as some other things.
Yaqub, which is Jacob, so that's a Jewish name. That's funny. You have a Jewish scientist, basically involved in inventing the white race. That's great.
Yeah, it's very interesting, this story. It actually is quite elaborate and involves science fiction at a high level. And what's interesting, you have some sophisticated Muslim apologists these days. And when I say Muslim, I mean Nation of Islam. They call themselves Muslims, so it's difficult. You got to understand what we're talking about, the context. If I say Muslim, okay, who actually try to get into DNA and various things that sometimes evolutionary scientists bring out is actually, well, here's some genetic evidence for this. And it's really interesting thing. Some of their apologetics are actually very sophisticated these days, mainly at the doing of a man who has a true actual degree named Wesley Muhammad. And he's inspired a legion of very sophisticated apologists these days for the Nation of Islam. Now, as I mentioned, current leader is Louis Farrakhan. He is an older man. And what will happen afterwards, because Farrakhan can generate headlines. And in fact, he was the main driving force behind the Million Man March, which maybe had up to 400,000 people there in DC of October 95. And I'm going to show now how NOI is still relevant and he can still generate headlines. Ready? Here we go. They had a follow-up after the Million Man March called Justice or Else in October 2015. And it wasn't as big, but I also don't think you'd want to describe it as a failure. And I took that particular screenshot there because I always find it fascinating that one of the speakers there was Ben Ami. Ben Ami is a Black Hebrew Israelite. Technically, the name of his group is called the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, and they actually were established in Dimona, Israel. They left the south side of Chicago in 1969 or so, and basically ended up in Dimona, Israel, and are still there today. There's 3,000 to 5,000 of them, and Phoenix Suns basketball player has been in some ways involved with them. I don't know what level currently is, Mari Stoudemire. And so Ben Ami is now dead, but before his death, Whitney Houston actually visited him, calling him a spiritual mentor. So my point is, Farrakhan has been able to grab a lot of people and put them together. Now, showing this is important to understand the things that the Nation of Islam teaches and the way they appeal. In the name of our Savior Allah, which one will side the war of Armageddon? White devil Christianity, which represents slavery, suffering, and death. And notice they have what is called strange fruit hanging from trees. That's a reference to the Billie Holiday song, means the lynching of Black folks, really all throughout America, primarily the South, of course. And basically saying this represents what American Christianity is all about, or the new Islam, which represents freedom, justice, and equality. And you have Elijah Muhammad there standing on a square, and he says, our Savior Allah and his new universal order of Islam shall be the victor. The 6,000-year murderous rule of the white man has come to an end. And that is something that apparently Yaqub himself established in some way. So it's actually designed, it's designed to actually help the Nation of Islam long term. It's a strange origin story, but they believe it has a terminus date to when they will rule, and that will be when the mothership comes back. Messenger Muhammad stands on the square of supreme wisdom. And if you notice that little red and white book that I held up in the beginning, the name of it was Supreme Wisdom. Now, I mentioned earlier Muhammad Ali. You see him there with Malcolm X. And Malcolm X in some way has had a revisited legacy. What I mean by that is the more we find out about the end of his life and the more we find out about sort of his personal thoughts, there's been a number of authors who have come out with books that have had to do with things like journals and things like that. They're kind of newly getting discovered. He is a fascinating figure. I understand some people might have a knee-jerk reaction to Malcolm X, but I would just encourage you to try to understand things before you just have the knee-jerk. You can still disagree, but it's better to disagree from a place of understanding. And we're not going to be able to get into this book today, but there is a great book by a dear Christian brother that is on New York University Press, and it's called Malcolm and the Cross, The Nation of Islam, Malcolm X, and Christianity, Louis DiCarlo. This is an amazing book to understand deeper sort of the religious life of Nation of Islam and Malcolm himself. And there you see at the bottom, see where it says FOI on those guys' hats? That is the fruit of Islam. And they're the guys you'll see kind of running security at Nation of Islam events and usually surrounding their speakers. The fruit of Islam, the idea is look at the quality of men that we produce. They're disciplined and, they're real men. And so that's why the security branch is called the FOI. And to this day, I believe they teach self-defense. And again, if you're like, oh, they teach self-defense, That means we want to kill people. No, first of all, it's self-defense. Remember, I'm a critic of the Nation of Islam, but I think we need to be fair to them. First of all, it's self-defense. And second of all, hey, if you were a black person living in the 50s or 60s, especially, it might be good to know a little bit of self-defense, especially. I'm not saying self-defense is bad now, but I'm just saying, try to put things in context. All right. Going on here, there's a young Louis Farrakhan. He used to be known as Louis X there. He's promoting a message to the black men in America there, and he's promoting how to eat and live. Elijah Muhammad's books include what you don't eat and should eat and all that stuff. And he was very important on very big on kind of having the proper diets. And if you thought it was all in the past, again, I want to show you the reach of the Nation of Islam. There's Farrakhan with Paul Rosenberg and Eminem. They're having a little rap cipher there. And the point is to show that people still want to meet Farrakhan. People still, whatever the media says about him, he has a lot of fans and a lot of people who want to hear what he has to say. And because he's been so willing to take heat on so many issues, to be honest, there's a lot of people who have a lot of respect for him, even if they don't agree with them. And so, you can't write everyone off just because he's, how could you say that or say this? It's trying to understand these things. Now, again, what is going to happen when he passes, which cannot be that far away? The Nation of Islam, I think, is going to have a real leadership crisis. But in the meantime, Farrakhan's out meeting Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin. This is some of my hip hop heads. You know who that is. These are the guys who produced early Beastie Boys and Run DMC. And there's Eminem. And there's, of course, Barack Obama. And yes, Obama's church he went to in Chicago was somewhat friendly towards Farrakhan. It wasn't a Farrakhan church per se, but it was sort of a progressivist church, and they were open to Farrakhan. But it's not like they were the only church that was friendly to Farrakhan. And especially in Chicago, he's such an important figure. Lots of churches are. And again, I'm not saying that's okay or good. I'm just saying this stuff goes pretty deep. Now let's talk a little bit more about the Nation of Islam, and I'm just taking different pictures from them to show how they promote family, they promote stability, and people look at this as good things. But I'm going to show them in the news, and I think we're going to see some very interesting stuff from this because it'll give you an idea of their beliefs, and again, make you not doubt their relevancy, even though they are certainly smaller than they were in the 60s. There is Farrakhan at Aretha Franklin's funeral. And he's with Jesse Jackson and a lot of important people on the stage. Bill Clinton was up there and everything else. This was quite a big deal, Aretha Franklin's funeral. There's Al Sharpton. You see Bill Clinton. And this is interesting. I'm going to read this quote here. And this is Farrakhan talking about some kind of relationship in a sense, with Aretha Franklin. And this happened in September 2018. In 1972, when I was minister in New York City, Temple number 7, the police attacked our mosque. And by the way, the cops, they were very aggressive towards the Nation of Islam. Again, whatever you think about them, the question is, do they have a right to believe what they believe? And cops certainly did harass them, and it was pretty wild. And so check this out. Within a few hours, Aretha Franklin came to the mosque, to my office, and said that she saw the news and came as quickly as she could to stand with us and offer us her support. So that's a little vignette he told at the funeral there. And I actually visited the church in which that funeral happened. And it was a very large church, beautiful campus. Check this out. This was a news story in December of 2018. So I'm kind of going through the past couple of years. There was a controversy, and you can find the links to all these stories if you Google these keywords I'm showing you. Don't Google, use DuckDuckGo. Sorry about that. It's a bad habit. But if you DuckDuckGo or Brave, use one of those more safe search engines that don't sell all your data as bad. When you go there, you can see all these stories I'm talking about if you just look up these keywords. December 2018, there's controversy over the receiving federal funds for religious services, spiritual guide services, and study services. The Nation of Islam has a prison ministry, and they actually receive federal dollars to be able to go in there. And there was somewhat of a controversy about this because they, quote, received at least $364,500 in contracts and awards from the U.S. Bureau of Prisons and the Department of Justice between fiscal 2008 and fiscal 2019. So people are like, wait, why are you giving these guys to go money into prisons? Well, yeah,
Did they build mansions? Did they build a mansion with that, just like the BLM people just built a mansion? Or
No, they did. Now, Farrakhan, he's got a little something. And what's interesting, since you mentioned that, Elijah Muhammad had some health problems, and so he had bought a second house, not just in Chicago, that he would go to. And guess where it is? South side of Phoenix, Arizona. Elijah Muhammad actually has had a house on the south side of Phoenix, Arizona. And guess what else? Louis Farrakhan sort of inherited the house. Now, it's not a mansion, though, or anything like that. I'm just bringing this up because you mentioned it. But here's the bizarre thing. I've actually been there, and this is not the most professional way, but if you can see on my phone, this is the address is public record. I'm not showing the address or anything, but this is actually Farrakhan still has a house on the south side of Phoenix, and that's what it looks like. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's just a little picture. I stopped by. You've got it actually says right there, Honorable Elijah Muhammad Historic District on it. And, it's enclosed in fences, but it's not like a mansion or anything like that. It's not, over the top, but I don't know. It's just funny because I decided to bring that up because you got that. And it's got the red and white Nation of Islam flag there. It wasn't very windy when I took this, so you can't see it very well. But anyways, I just thought I'd show people that. But actually, I am going to show something from not BLM, but something else here in a second that's related to that.
Give me 1 second, bro. There's someone here by the name of Wise Man who is concerned as to why we are bringing this topic during Ramadan. Wise Man, if you want to act like a wise man, I'll kick you out of here before you even blink an eye. So this is your one and only warning right now. Thank you. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I don't even, what is talking about the Nation of Islam really have to do with. That doesn't have a lot to do with Ramadan, really.
Yeah, I think this is just a classic example of stupidity. People who think they're smart, and it's funny that they're calling themselves wise man. So anyway, bro, keep going.
Well, hopefully there's not two more of them because we'll have three. All right, three wise men. Okay. Now I don't know if you guys remember the Women's March. It's a pretty wild thing. These are the videos where people go there and they ask them, what is a woman? And they can't even define it because they're, imbued with trans ideology and stuff. But, this is where they had the celebrities and they got on stage and talked about, I'm a nasty woman. You had celebrities who did these poems that were all about, I'm a nasty woman, and was promoting abortion and stuff like that. Well, one of the gals who's really big, she's a co-founder, Tamika D. Mallory. She got in a little bit of trouble because she attended the Savior's Day speech in 2018. And if you see, there's a picture of her, Tamika, there, and Farrakhan, and she said, thank God this man is still alive and doing well. He is definitely the GOAT, greatest of all time. Happy birthday at Louis Farrakhan, right? She got in trouble for that. And one of the reasons was because some of the quotes that Farrakhan brought up, I think at the actual speech, this is one of the quotes from the speech that she attended, is my point. So it wasn't just a random quote because he's got all kinds of quotes. This is what he said while she was there. So people were trying to say, hey, you need to distance yourself. But here's what he said at that speech that she was at. Jews were responsible for the filth and degenerate behavior that Hollywood is putting out, turning men into women and women into men, which is fascinating. That notice there he is having a problem with the blurring of the gender lines. And yet at the Women's March, even though it's a women's march, the actual attendees don't know what to do, because what I mean is they have a women's march, but they're also caught up in intersectionality. And so when you ask a lot of these average attendees, what's a woman? And they basically say, well, it's anyone who wants to be a woman. Ironically, he's criticizing that. And yet he's also, of course, making an anti-Semitic statement. So you see that there's these alliances sometimes on what people sometimes think of as the left that don't always match, because not all of Farrakhan's views really match very well on the left. You know what I'm saying? Such as that. And so that sometimes gets people into trouble. Here's another example where he drew criticism for his February 2019 Savior's Day speech. Listen to what he said here. And there I've got a picture up. I believe it's from the 2016 one, but nonetheless, here you go. The real story is what I tried to tell you from the beginning. It didn't happen back there. It's happening right while you're looking at it. I represent the Messiah. I represent the Jesus, and I am that Jesus. If I am not, take my life. This is something that Farrakhan said himself. And when I say got in trouble, it was mainly with kind of conservative or Christian leaning kind of media news outlets, because they were like, what's dude saying, right? The news media, the mainstream.
Bro, if he's the Messiah, Jesus, I'll quit. I can tell you that much.
Well, it's almost like the mantle has passed on, because remember Elijah Muhammad was saying the same thing about they were saying the same thing about Fard Muhammad. Now listen to this. This is a continuation of the quote. This is fascinating. Look at this. Look at this. This is Farrakhan talking about himself. God does not love this world. God never sent Jesus to die for this world. Jesus died because he was 2,000 years too soon to bring about the end of civilization of the Jews. He never was on a cross. There was no Calvary for that Jesus. So check this out. Yeah, such a interesting mix of things here. First of all, you have the classic Muslim denial that Jesus died on the cross at the bottom there. But then you've also got the fact that they're still saying he died. But then, by the way, his death basically in the Nation of Islam story comes at the hand of crooked cops. It's a bizarre story, but he still dies. But it's a different. He dies like in an alleyway against a fence, getting shot by cops or something like that. But check this out. God never sent Jesus to die for this world. He died because he was 2,000 years too soon. So the idea is the end of the civilization of Jews is about here, right? Because he came 2,000 years ago. I don't know if you guys, you see the math. You say, well, this is kind of eschatological, right? Now watch this. Here I am in front of you. I represent the Jesus that saves. Wait, I thought you just said Jesus didn't come to die for this world. I don't represent somebody that came to judge you and me for our errors and mistakes.
It's amazing, man. So he knows why Jesus came. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, Elijah Muhammad actually rewrote his own version of the Gospels, and that's where that account comes from. So, I mean, people don't sometimes realize, they focus on these extreme statements he makes that are anti-Semitic, and I get that, but that's sort of like the media just putting the easy stuff in front of you. There's also incredibly heretical things that the Nation of Islam teaches and the Farrakhan says. And sometimes he'll say stuff that sounds Christian. I remember there's a clip going around a couple years ago that made it sound like he was really saying Jesus died for his sins and he's a redeemer and all this. But it's like they have so many redefined words that you really got to watch out before you get too excited. Now, here's another example where they made the news. Some of his books got banned by Amazon, this 3-volume set here called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. It's supposed to be put out by their research department. Now, I'm somewhat of a libertarian, so everyone may not agree. I don't think Amazon should do stuff like this. Someone may say, well, my thought is let the market decide. This is because the thing is they're going to do this to us too. So if you just think,
of course, bro, of course, I agree with you. I mean, God gave us this freedom to enjoy it, and we have these knuckleheads trying to decide what I should think and what I should buy and what I should say. Which people, by the way, in the U.S. need to be very careful, because I grew up in a system like that. I can tell you this much. Mm-hmm. Hell is coming to the next door soon here, because you're not going to have any freedom, at all to think for yourself. And that's what my concern is. The next generation will not know a reference point to try to compare things to.
Yeah, that's good. So I think Christians just need to think clearly about this, not emotionally, because exactly. Amazon is already starting to, one day you're not going to be able to find Robert Spencer's books, for example, on Amazon.
I'm concerned about your books, bro.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe mine will be next. And the thing is, it's almost like the equivalent of a digital book burning these days, because how do people mainly get their books? And what if you're a researcher? What if I just wanted to research these books? Now I have to go buy them from the Nation of Islam direct. You know what I mean? But they said they can't have products that contain violent or offensive material that has no historical significance. I guess that's why Mein Kampf is still there, I guess. Amazon reserves the right to make a determination on the historical value of the item. Okay, yeah, well, like they know about research. There was a big thing that happened that a lot of people didn't know about, that Farrakhan made waves at this as well. A well-known LA rapper named Nipsey Hussle died. And this is around April 2019, and they actually put him on the cover of The Final Call, and he gave remarks at the memorial that really became big. And he used the man's real name, Ermias, in the language of the Eritrean people, because Nipsey Hussle was half Eritrean. People means God is rising. He is a prophetic voice of all in the community. He was a brilliant mind. The Spirit of God was in his life. And I do that to just show sort of this sort of ethnic universalism that's quasi present in the Nation of Islam, meaning Nipsey Hussle wasn't a faithful member or anything like that of the Nation of Islam. And yet you see him speaking about this way. It's sort of this ecumenical by just strictly the fact that there's an ethnic shared thing going on. And that really shows kind of the root of this. It's more about some kind of nationalism than really the theology. And that's why some of the stuff that you say, how could anyone believe that? It's because really the main reason they're involved in the organization or group is not really because of the theological beliefs a lot of times. There's other things they get out of it, and they kind of just are willing to accept the silliness. They also banned Farrakhan off Facebook and Instagram. And this is the kind of triumphant, or resilient response that was in the final call right after this ban that happened. And the top, all opposition to truth will be destroyed. We are Farrakhan. Black America condemns Facebook decision to ban Nation of Islam. Minister Louis Farrakhan is activist, leaders, scholars, and users blast the social media network for empress denial of free speech denial. Now, again, I actually agree with him there. I actually did a show.
Let me ask you this question, brother, before we jump into the next slide. Is there any connection between today, I should say, in our modern day, in the last year or so? Is there any connection between the Nation of Islam and Black Lives Matters, for instance?
To my knowledge, I know of no such connection that is in any way meaningful or substantial. And let me say a few things about that. Nation of Islam, in general, doesn't really prefer to kind of link up with someone else. They kind of want to be in the driver's seat with these kind of events. The Million Man March is a perfect example. You can come join our thing. Every now and then you'll see him be part of something, but they really kind of try to make it on their terms, is my view of the relationship. So jumping on with something like BLM doesn't seem like them. Also, the Nation of Islam is actually relatively conservative in a lot of ways. So I know people think about some of the rhetoric, and I get it, but they are not the kind of folks to go out and protest and throw stuff and all. That is not what they believe. This is a very middle class friendly religion. And even when they were sort of in their heyday, there's an amazing story, and Spike Lee portrayed it in the Malcolm X film with Denzel Washington, which he just killed that role. And no pun intended, ouch, I'm sorry about that. So in that, there's a black person who was beat by the cops, and they didn't give him medical attention, and they locked him up, and he was probably going to die if he didn't get medical attention very soon because of the way the cops had treated him. And this happened in New York. Malcolm X heard about it, and then he brought hundreds upon hundreds, apparently, Nation of Islam members, men and women, everybody, and had them in a quiet, peaceful kind of, this is a general way the story is told and the way it's portrayed. This is my understanding of it, kind of orderly, almost military-like line. And, instructed them, walk this way, do that, do this. And, the cops opened the window and were like, dang, what's going on outside of our window, right? And my point is, the New York cops were freaked out, and they were like, no one man should have that much power. Now, Malcolm X didn't instruct them to actually do anything violent. They were like, hey, you need to release our guy. Look at the community is behind me saying this. And my point is, it's really not their way. And the other thing is, BLM has basically said we're about the destruction of the nuclear family. Nation of Islam would be hard set against that, and they would be hard set against the LGBTQ plus elements in the BLM as well. It's just, these are really two different agendas. Would be my they're different. Then
I'm just concerned that if they link up, then there is going to be a whirlwind of trouble, to be honest with you. But so far, at least, I just wanted to know. And I wonder also, brother, some people are making comments, and I agree with them, and you can address it now or towards the end. What is their view on the fact that Islam, the Orthodox form of Islam, actually was built upon slavery, having slaves? Muhammad himself denied, basically freedom to some of them. He claimed to be white person. Is there anything that they, teach about when it comes to that?
Wesley Muhammad, especially the sophisticated apologist that I mentioned earlier, he actually has a number of articles you can find online that are somewhat technical at points. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of it is, as the old timers like to say, hogwash. But he actually gets into trying to look at Arabic words and all kinds of things to basically say, no, it wasn't a case of a white prophet with black slaves. And it's kind of a long story, but I think a lot of them kind of accept those defenses to say, no, that's actually not really what it was. He's described as white, but it doesn't mean some kind of ethnic thing. It has to do with sort of the fact that he's high status. It doesn't mean that. And these slaves, we don't really know their color, like that kind of thing sometimes is looked at, I've seen, but it gets a little more sophisticated, and I couldn't relate all of it now. But my point is that they don't accept that narrative, most of them, as valuable, or they don't agree that that's the case. You see what I'm saying? They think it's, and you can, and again, if you want to see, just look up Wesley Muhammad, then you put slavery and you can find, he's come up with these arguments, that are interesting. I mean, they're wrong, but it's interesting because I've even seen other groups grab a hold of some of his arguments and utilize them. And so, Facebook said, in regards to that decision, we've always banned individuals or organizations to promote or engage in violence and hate, regardless of ideology. The process of routing potential violators, extensive end is what led us to remove these accounts today. Look, the Nation of Islam, when they were sort of killing, which was kind of in the leadership transition that happened when Malcolm X got kicked out and stuff, that was kind of like this. A lot of stuff happened during that time. Honestly, they mainly just killed each other. I'm not saying but if you look at the actual what happened, it was mainly them certain, and it wasn't this large thing. There's a few cases. It wasn't like the Black Panthers where some of them did get caught up in targeting cops, and even the Black Panthers, it wasn't all Black Panthers. There were sort of these more radical sects, is my understanding. And again, I'm always willing to learn about this stuff, but they weren't that level, and they've really, I don't want to say they've mellowed out in the sense, I'm not trying to tell you guys that they're all good now, okay? I mean, look what I'm talking about here. But I just think people got to understand this organization is a lot more sort of puts on an air of respectability and middle class behavior these days. And so all the BLM stuff and all that is just really not their cup of tea. I just don't see them being involved with that kind of thing. And there's no evidence that they have been. They're kind of doing their own thing, right? And they really think, look, if you're going to have change, you got to get with us. The solution is not going to be this BLM stuff. I think they think it's kind of a waste, going the wrong direction. You know what I mean?
Got it.
All right. Let's see here. Now let's talk about some of their beliefs. Let's get into some of the beliefs there directly. And there's 3 main figures of the Nation of Islam. So again, I showed you the paper in the beginning, and you can find this online. I apologize, it's a little bit small, but I try to fit a little bit in here. I want you to hear what they believe in their own words. This is points 5, 6, and 7. We believe in the resurrection of the dead. Sounds good. Oh, not in physical resurrection, but in mental resurrection. So when you become part of them, they don't say that you're born again or something like that. They say you've achieved your resurrection. It's a mental resurrection. We believe that the so-called Negroes, interesting, the Hebrew Israelites use that same language. They say so-called blacks, are most in need of mental resurrection. Therefore, they will be resurrected first. Furthermore, we believe we are the people of God's choice, as it has been written, that God would choose the rejected and the despised. We can find no other persons fitting this description in these last days more than the so-called Negroes in America. We believe in the resurrection of the righteous. That is essentially, actually, and this is what's interesting, this is similar to the Hebrew Israelite belief. We match the curses of the Bible that would fall upon the people of Israel in the last days. Point 6, we believe in the judgment. We believe this first judgment will take place as God revealed in America. So they kind of view America as like the epicenter of evil in a lot of ways. Number 7, I mean, imagine this is their statement of beliefs. Look how much it mentions America, right? We believe this is the time in history for the separation of the so-called Negroes and the so-called white Americans. So say what I try to be charitable towards them, but they are literally separatists. I mean, you see point 7, they are literally black separatists. I mean, the separation. There is some evidence that at another point in time during their history, they actually had some meetings with some members of the KKK. And what they were trying to do is see if they could pull strings and the KKK could help them get some of their own separate tracts of land within part of the United States, where they would actually have their own places, right?
Man, I'm getting dizzy by all this information, bro.
Well, it's kind of interesting if you think about it. The KKK probably realizes, well, it's not like we can kill every black person, right? But if we can just stay separate from them, right? The KKK would kind of want that. Let's keep, they're over there. They do their thing. We do our thing. That's something a KKK guy, a white supremacist would like. Well, guess what? The black separatists, known as the Nation of Islam, they want the same exact thing. So the bizarre thing is there's a little bit of a common cause that they have. We believe the black man should be freed in name as well as in fact. By this we mean that we should be freed from the names imposed upon him by his former slave masters, names which identified him as being the slave master's slave. And I mean, they have a point there in the sense that I got a great grandpa, and then a grandpa under him, and they're from Sicily, and the last name's Polino. Sicily, Polino, boom, 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 makes sense, right? If you're black and you've been in America for five, go back how many ever generations you want, you're Johnson or something, that McDowell, that is a slave master's name. That means you were on the McDowell plantation. So the legacy is stuck there. And that's why a lot of times when they join the Nation of Islam, this is not as common these days, they adopt the X, which means unknown. My real last name is unknown. That's why Malcolm X went from Malcolm Little to Malcolm X, and so you got to kind of, I want Christians to have some level of, even in disagreement, have some level of sympathy and be like, you could see the struggle of identity that you might have. And at least now they're turning to the wrong answer, right? The Nation of Islam is not the answer, but just have some level of sympathy to understand the place from which it comes. I'll read this last point. I'll let my brother here comment. It's just one thing. You don't even need to bring up a slide. We believe that if we are free indeed, we should go in our own people's names, the black people of the earth. So I'm going to bring up some more, but what do you, any thoughts on that, Al-Fadi? Sorry, I know it's a lot.
I mean, it's just interesting, brother, like you mentioned. I mean, there is a struggle in man's heart about identity, about race, about color. And the problem is the Bible actually solved all that problem. I mean, we're all made in the image of God. I mean, right there, I mean, there's a reason why God mentioned it from the very first page of the Bible to help us understand our place in his own salvation history. And the fact that he sent his son to die for everybody. He didn't come to die for whites or yellow or brown or red or black. He died for everybody. I mean, it's just fascinating to me how Satan just keeps on innovating religions, and race is becoming more and more these days a hot topic.
Yeah, definitely. I want to respond to one comment. I just found it interesting. Lan Astaslim said, did you once consider joining NOI? No, I never did consider joining the Nation of Islam. And, they don't have a lot of white members, as you could imagine, or even for that fact, they don't have a ton of, say, Hispanic or Asian members. However, they do have some, and they all have their own individual story of how they get there. And there's levels of, how much they're accepted or not accepted. But there are some. It's not absolutely impossible to be involved with them some way and maybe not fit the stereotype. Obviously, it's not the majority. We're talking very small percentages. But I remember there was a well-known rapper, Everlast, House of Pain, for a while. I think he was involved with this, for example. So it's not impossible. But no, I never considered joining myself. Right. Never did. It was, I respected the guys I met who were in NOI. I did respect them, but I knew they were super wrong. So I didn't want to join. Let's go on to points 8 through 11 here. We believe in justice for all, whether in God or not. We believe as others that we are due equal justice as human beings. See, we can agree with that sentence right there, or that last statement part of the sentence. The one's kind of odd. We believe in equality as a nation of equals. We do not believe that we are equal with our slave masters in the status of freed slaves. They're saying they're freed in name, but they're really not equal still in America. We recognize and respect American citizens as independent peoples, and we respect their laws which govern this nation. Notice it's called the Nation of Islam because long-term they want to establish their own nation, but they believe it's going to happen sort of supernaturally. We believe that the offer of integration is hypocritical and is made by those who are trying to deceive the black peoples into believing that their 400-year-old open enemies of freedom, justice, and equality are all of a sudden their friends. Hey, again, put yourself in the shoes, of a black person in the 60s, right? Or any time, right? Especially like just think about. And so you can see by this, notice that they thought Martin Luther King was at the very least, for example, misguided. They would think someone who wants integration, they're like, that's misguided. Why would you want to try to say, let's hold hands with our people who have been oppressing this whole time? So
what is, I mean, if you think about this doctrine right here,
yeah,
what is it that they're promoting? Like annihilation of other race just because it's not suitable for integration, for instance?
No. They just want to be separate. They want, when they're talking amongst themselves, they might say something like this. we just want the uncivilized white people descended from the cave beasts to have their own separate nation, and we have our own nation of Islam. We can live by our laws, and where we won't be oppressed by, the devils who run this country. But they don't. I've never heard them saying anything about killing them all or anything like that. They just.
So can a white person become a follower of Nation of Islam?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it's rare. There's rare examples, and sometimes it's like, you kind of ask about how did this happen, but there's rare examples. I heard one guy justify it because he said, well, all white people are snakes, but consider not all snakes are poisonous. I always thought that was a funny justification. It's rare. I mean, there's also my understanding is some Asian peoples, perhaps some Arabs. These are extreme minorities. I think there's, you can look online and find here and there, but by and large, it's not the case. But I think you can, from what I've seen these days, but it's kind of rare, and I don't really know how that all works. But I just know that there's some reality to that. Okay. Furthermore, we believe that such deception is intended to prevent Black people from realizing that the time in history has arrived for the separation from the whites of this nation. If the white people are truthful about their professed friendship toward the so-called Negro, they can prove it by dividing up America with their slaves. We do not believe that America will ever be able to furnish enough jobs for her own millions of unemployed, in addition to jobs for the 20 million Black people as well. So saying, oh, you say you love us now? Then give us our own separate nation, and we'll leave you alone, and you leave us alone. Number 10, we believe that we who declare ourselves to be righteous Muslims should not participate in wars which take the lives of humans. We do not believe this nation should force us to take part in such wars, for we have nothing to gain from it unless America agrees to give us the necessary territory wherein we may have something to fight for. They're saying, why would we fight for this country? If you give us our own nation, we'd fight for that, but why would we fight for your wars? And guess what? Muhammad Ali, who joined the Nation of Islam, was called to go to Vietnam and didn't go, and then he ended up in jail instead of boxing because he believes this. But this shows, as far as official documentation, understand that there's a peaceful, non-violent element. They're saying we don't even want to, fight your wars, right? Nation of Islam, they forbid members to walk around with weapons and firearms, for example. So like the guy who, ran the Capitol, you'll see in their letter, they'll say, well, he went and brought a knife with the intent to kill. That's something we would forbid anyway. I'm just bringing it out. Again, I'm a critic of them, but I try to offer a charitable critique. And I know everyone will say, you're being too nice. No, I'm just telling you, some of it's from personal experience too. I know some of these guys.
And I just want to answer one quick question here, what is the view of Orthodox Islam concerning Nation of Islam? Well, they will tell you they're heretical. They're an offshoot of Islam. They do not follow the true form of Islam. So that would be usually the answer you would get. But as my brother mentioned here, that there are some nations, Islamic nations, kind of like cozy up to the Nation of Islam for political reasons.
Yeah. There is, from what I've seen or heard, sort of a latent disrespect or distrust, because they're kind of like, hey, you guys aren't even really, and come on, this is ridiculous. But there's some other Muslims I've seen who have a much more open arms view. And I'm not even just talking about the dictators who have said, come on, Farrakhan, visit our country, see how great it is. You actually have some Muslims I've seen, sort of like maybe even in America, who say, look, the Nation of Islam is not a perfect organization. And I'm paraphrasing things I've heard. But if you notice, it's a perfect door or gateway to a lot of Black Americans into the universal religion of Islam. And so we encourage people, we're glad that they join in and begin to learn about Prophet Muhammad and begin to have a respect for the Quran. We just want them to, and again, I'm paraphrasing my own words, but kind of complete the process by joining the larger ummah of society. But there are some Muslims who have a charitable view, even though they understand how unorthodox it is, because their view is this is a perfect gateway into Sunni Islam, because that's usually the direction they go. They usually go Sunni if they take that next step. And there's some argumentation that may show that the Nation of Islam maybe one of the largest ways, as far as if you look at a funnel of people who have kind of funneled people inadvertently, because they want people to stay in their own organization, of course, into Sunni Islam, especially with the what Warith Muhammad did, the son of Elijah Muhammad. That's exactly what he did. He changed it all over, and they're just Orthodox Sunni Muslims these days. He's an imam, all that kind of stuff, whatever. So some of them realize that and view that as an advantageous thing.
Yeah, great, brother. Keep going. I'm sorry.
I love taking the questions. In fact, let's stop in a couple of slides and take questions if we could. I mean, I'm up for it if you're up for it, and I'll do what I can. I don't claim to be the expert. I'm going to actually offer some resources.
Why don't we do this? If everyone has a question, please put CIRA International or put like in capital letter questions so I can see them. And continue with more beliefs while I start spotting those questions for you.
Right. Now, this is a little bit different. This is the what we want section, what the Muslims want that you'll see at the end. And I'm just going to read through these. So again, you can kind of understand the mindset, because this appears in every final call. This appears on the website. And this is the basics to what they hold. 1, we want freedom. We want a full and complete freedom. And remember, for them, that equals a separate country. We want justice, equal justice under the law. We want justice applied equally to all, regardless of creed or class or color. 3, we want equality of opportunity. We want equal membership in society with the best in civilized society. Number 4, we want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to provide such land, and that the area must be fertile and minerally rich. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in the separate territory for the next 20 to 25 years, till we are able to produce and supply our own needs. Now, obviously, this seems like something that will never happen, but it is interesting to know that in the 60s, the Nation of Islam did buy up a fair amount of property and actually really encouraged a spirit of entrepreneurship. And they did things like, had their own printing press, but then they also would have their own trucks. So they had their own logistical operation as well. You see what I'm saying? And so, like, you look, and there's some level where they're serious about this. And by the way, if you want to compliment the Nation of Islam on anything, that's one thing you could compliment them on, hypothetically, is entrepreneurship. I don't mean the separatism, okay? I mean the entrepreneurship. And this is a fascinating book here. I'm just going to read this one little section here to that end by Alexis Johnson. He's a pastor in Newark, New Jersey. And the book is called I Was a Minister in the Nation of Islam, Now a Minister of Christ. On page 13, listen to what he says as he talks about when he first got in and when he was learning about this. I'm going to read this here. Whenever I saw Muslims on the street, I noticed how clean they looked, how the women dressed, and how well respected they were. I saw many former drug dealers and drug addicts now clean and running legitimate businesses. They had their own barbershops, bakeries, restaurants, clothing stores, dry cleaning stores, and bookstores in the community. This was the antithesis of the white community I'd grown up back in New Jersey, but this was no small town movement. On 116th Street and Lenox Avenue, New York City, there was a Muslim school, K-2 12th grade. While studying with the organization in 1973, I learned that on the national level, the NOI owned 35,000 acres of farmland in the states of Georgia, Michigan, and Alabama, where they grew and produced their own food. In the city of Chicago, they had their own supermarket, clothing factory, and newspaper plant where the paper Muhammad Speaks was printed. They owned a fleet of tractor-trailer trucks and shipped the newspapers all over America. They also built homes and apartment buildings exclusively for NOI members in Chicago. There was employment for the members all over the country. So, that was something that was attractive to Alexis Johnson. He became, I think, Alexis X when he joined. But just show that, they've tried to do this on their own, but obviously it doesn't seem like this will happen. Listen to the next one right here. Back to the what we want section in the middle of 4. Since we cannot get along with them in peace and equality, after giving them 400 years of our sweat and blood and receiving in return some of the worst treatment human beings have ever experienced, we believe our contributions to this land and suffering forced upon us by white America justifies our demand for complete separation in state or territory of our own. Number 5, we want freedom for all believers of Islam now held in federal prisons. We want freedom for all black men and women now under death sentence in innumerable prisons in the North as well as the South. We want every black man and woman to have the freedom to accept or reject being separated from the slave master's children and establish a land of their own. We know that the above plan for the solution of the black and white conflict is the best and only answer to the problem between the two people. And then this is the last thing I'm going to read. And then it's going to be on a picture, which I'm going to explain. And then I'll be done with this section. We'll take questions. Well, number 6, we want an immediate end to the police brutality and mob attacks against the so-called Negro throughout the United States. We believe that the federal government should intercede to see that black men and women tried in white courts receive justice in accordance with the laws of the land, or allow us to build a new nation for ourselves dedicated to justice, freedom, and equality. As long as we are not allowed to establish a state or territory of our own, we demand not only equal justice under the laws of the United States, but equal employment opportunities now. We do not believe that after 400 years of free or nearly free labor, sweat, and blood, which has helped America become rich and powerful, so many thousands of black people should have to subsist on relief or charity or live in poorhouses. Number 8, we want the government of the United States to exempt our people from all taxation as long as we are deprived of equal justice under the laws of the land. And number 9, we want equal education, but separate schools up to 16 for boys and 18 for girls, on the condition that the girls be sent to women's colleges and universities. We want all black children educated, taught, and trained by their own teachers. Under such schooling system, we believe we will make a better nation of people. The United States government should provide free all necessary textbooks and equipment. Schools and college buildings of Muslims teachers shall be left to teach and train their people in the way of righteousness, decency, and self-respect. Number 10, we believe that intermarriage or race mixing should be prohibited. Again, they are separatist officially in their doctrine. We want the religion of Islam taught without hindrance or suppression. So now you have some of their agenda that they've had for 40 or more years from the going on almost, I think, 80 years now, from their own pen, as it were.
Yeah.
Lastly, and then let's take questions. This is one of the strangest pictures you will ever see. And the reason is, in recent times, it's come to light that the Nation of Islam has teamed up with Scientology. If you notice, those are NOI members there. And they're getting a certificate of recognition for what? Using Dianetics. Dianetics is like this intro to the Church of Scientology belief. And I guess they even audit their members now when they come in. It's very bizarre. Everyone hasn't figured out what is going on there. They think it's like this I scratch my back type of thing, where the NOI receives some funds, it appears, from the Church of Scientology for doing this. And then the Church of Scientology receives interest from black members, which they don't really have a lot of black members. It's sort of a rich white people religion, Scientology. No one has been able to fully figure it out what the heck is going on with this very bizarre relationship with Scientology and NOI. But if you think I'm joking, just look up Nation of Islam, Church of Scientology, and you'll find articles on it and them even speaking about it. And it's such a shocking, surprising development. But there's some similarities. They both have this alien mythology in their background. And so you can see some odd overlap. But what a bizarre thing that the NOI is now teamed up with the Church of Scientology in some way, where that's part of the training. At some point, it appears. It's not exactly clear on the relationship. No one fully understands it, but they've admitted to it to some degree. And we'll end there. And if we come on again, we could talk next time maybe about the Nation of Islam and Christian doctrine or something like that.
Absolutely. We want you to do that comparison. And even that one, if we have to split it, we can do that. So let's look at some questions. I think we did talk about the fact that they are not really interested in annihilating the white race. They're interested in separating themselves completely. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like they're focused more on America than anything else. So do they have any universal view? I mean, do they think like they have an aspiration or a calling to take this to other places, for instance?
Yeah, but the missionary efforts of the Nation of Islam, I'm not saying they're completely limited, but they seem mainly focused on neighborhoods and areas in the United States of America. And that's the main place they get growth in members. I'm not 100% clear on what they think about people, say, still on the west coast of Africa and stuff like that, because the Nation of Islam makes some ethnic claims as well. It seems they claim that black folks in America are the true people of Israel. And so it also
there's a connection with the black Hebrew Israelites here when it comes to that to some extent.
It seems so, but they don't really explain it very well. Some of their reasoning seems different, and it's bizarre because Fard claimed that black folks in America were from the lost tribe of Shabazz, and his thing was more sort of Arabicized. And then these folks they're supposed to still learn. They're supposed to still learn Arab for their prayers and things like that. Like at the Million Man March, it began with a call to prayer from saying, like in Arabic and all that. You know what I mean? They had sort of these trappings of Orthodox Islam that go on.
I have to say, I mean, the first time I heard of them, I honestly, because I was still a Muslim, I did not really think much. I thought they're Muslims. They're just calling themselves this way because of their color. But later on, of course, I began to realize we're talking about a whole different movement or a group here. Now, a quick question here. I was spotting something. It just disappeared. Are they, can you identify them as a political, movement more so than anything else? Because the language they use in their belief tend to be more on the political side.
So the kind of question is like, what's the final goal of the Nation of Islam? And there was some kind of, Malcolm X reported like what appeared to be an interesting conversation between him and Elijah Muhammad, that my understanding of the way it went is something like Malcolm X is like, look, man, this ain't really real Islam. The more I found out about real Islam, like, what are we doing here? Again, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And Elijah Muhammad response seemed to be, I believe, according to Malcolm X, something like, this is the only valid religion for the black man in America. Like, it was almost like, don't take it away. Its orthodoxy or adherence to classical Islam is really not the point. The point is what gives hope and what is useful for black folks in America. And so that's what matters. And that really seems to be the most important thing. I'm not saying that people involved in this don't believe it. Farrakhan knows it's not popular to talk about the mothership that is presently above the United States of America, waiting to unleash its fury on America and rain down judgment. It's a UFO ship that he says is speaking of in Ezekiel. He knows that's not popular with like a mainstream thing, yet he talks about it whenever he can. He doesn't really hide it. He talks openly about it. And I have a friend who was brought up in the Nation of Islam, and he tells stories about them seeing lights in the sky and saying that might be the mothership. My point by bringing that
connected to UFO, is that
say what?
Are they connecting something to to this magnitude with the UFOs? Maybe?
Yes. So you'll hear them sometimes say like certain UFO sightings and things like that. You got to look deeper into what they say about each one. But basically, these could be indications of an army and the mothership that is coming back to wreck shop, on America primarily. And he talks about it. And the reason I bring that up is to say, yes, you see ultimately this kind of political, pragmatic element to it. But there's also these beliefs that at least especially leaders and people who really believe in it, they really cling to and they think that it explains the way the world is. For example, this idea of Yakub, people laugh out, which of course it is ridiculous, but it's almost like how we do a theodicy where we seek to philosophically, theologically, biblically explain the problem of evil and the actions of God and relationship to it. The Nation of Islam is sort of engaging in the opposite way, basically where a lot of black folks are thinking, dang, these white folks in America are so wicked for so long to us. There must be some reason. And it was almost like when you hear that they're invented as sort of an experiment go wrong, and that Allah had always designed them to kind of try the souls of black folk, it has some believability because you're like, well, I guess that explains why they're devils. They're grafted as soulless beings from jump. So that makes sense why they're so mean to us. You see what I'm saying? So it has like this pragmatic effect because it's explaining a problem that they see in the world. And same thing with the UFO. The idea is, well, America's done all this stuff to us, but don't worry. The mothership is going to take care of it, manned by black angels, which is actually, again, that's similar to Hebrew Israelites teach that kind of stuff too. So there's a little UFO element to it as well. Yes.
Got it. And are they in Canada or where is their largest concentration in North America? Basically?
Chicago and Detroit and New York City are the big places. I'm going to say I think they're in Canada. Like when you talk about a city like Toronto, they're going to have to, but I don't know. I think they list their mosques and how many they have. Actually, I have it. I don't have if they're in Canada or not, but I do have the number of mosques that they currently have. Let me see if I can go there. Where did it go? I don't know. I'm having trouble slipping around in my slides. Hold on. Let me try. No, that's not working. I don't know. I'm having trouble. I'm trying to look. I actually have it somewhere on my notes. How many? Well, hold on. Here I can do it. I'll tell you real quick. They have 130 mosques, and membership is supposed to be around 30,000. Now they'll say it's more, but they apparently in their heyday they may have had up to 250,000 members. So that's quite extensive, right?
Absolutely. Well, brother, I'm not seeing any other questions. So why don't you go ahead and give us a teaser about next time when we talk about comparison between what they believe in and Christianity. What are the top maybe one or two doctrines that typically there is some clash or maybe some overlap?
Well, the big thing is what is the nature of the gospel and what is the nature of God? And on both of those, we have a radical difference. So Elijah Muhammad's infant, when I mean infant, I mean his embryonic or beginning critiques. They're now more fully developed with the Nation of Islam theology. His beginning critiques of Christianity weren't just singular. There were multiple ways that Christianity was criticized. Let me explain what I mean. It was used as a religion of the slave master, of the oppressor, as this wicked, blood-soaked religion. You know what I mean? That was one way Christianity was looked at. And so it was criticized for its complicit nature. And the thing is that some of the stuff he said was wrong, but there was sometimes he was right. When he talked about Christian pastors writing to support slavery, or Christian churches, that wouldn't allow black members in, Christians who supported laws against, intermarriage and all this kind of stuff. But then the other critique dealt with theology. They're constantly attacking the Trinity, attacking key elements to Christian doctrine as well. And so you'll see these kind of, again, infantile and embryonic critiques. Now, again, they're more fully developed with modern Muslim apologists and their polemics, but attacking Christian doctrine straight out. Or subverting them, it's like, well, who's the Messiah? Hey, we got these Messiahs, and who's the Savior? Well, our guy's a Savior, and why did Jesus die? Well, he didn't really die, and he died this way, but he didn't die for sins. He died because he came too early to stop civilization of the Jews, and so you see everything subverted or contradicted. And you'll hear debates with Muslims, and they'll quote a scripture, and you'll be like, all right, well, let me quote the scripture, and you quote the scripture back, and say, well, the Bible's corrupted. And it starts to sound just like debates with Muslim apologists at that point. It's literally the same kind of thing, But a couple of sources I'm going to use that I also recommend people turn to if they want to find out more about this. This is a hard to find book, but man, it's so good. He does such a good job, and he has a personal testimony that's powerful. Alexis Johnson, I was a minister in the Nation of Islam. Now I'm a minister of Christ. He just writes with great passion and clarity. And this book just came out. Now, it only has one chapter in the Nation of Islam, but I got to tell you, the chapter in this written by Damon Richardson, who also was raised as a Nation of Islam, is one of the best single chapters I've ever read on the Nation of Islam. As far as if you want a one-stop shop to kind of get the basics history, the basic beliefs, and some really juicy quotes, and also the personal testimony of someone who lived through it, all in the span of, I don't know how many pages he took up, but I don't think it was much more than, let's see, how far did you go here, brother? Yeah, he didn't even go past like 30 or whatever pages. Just all the information. It's an amazing book. And then lastly, I'll recommend this book real quick. The Nation of Islam, one of the few books written from a Christian apologetic perspective on this, Understanding the Black Muslims by Stephen, I don't know how to pronounce the brother's last name, Soukalos, something like that. Sounds like a Greek last name if I had to guess, but this is a good book on PNR Publishing. And I find this book helpful as well. So there's some resources.
I hope you get your percentage when they sell these books. They
yeah,
skyrocket right now since we mentioned it.
Yeah, sure. I just like promoting good resources because I know, I'm not the answer man. We want people to develop their own ability to talk to folks. And if you know someone who's involved or influenced the Nation of Islam, the key is to ask them questions about what they believe, because they're not going to believe everything. A lot of them don't believe everything Farrakhan says. A lot of them have very various views on Malcolm X. Malcolm X is an incredibly controversial figure now within the average Nation of Islam member because of the past. Now there's less people who kind of understand that legacy and that kind of very difficult understanding about, I'm an NOI member. How should I look at Malcolm X? Because remember, he got branded as a traitor, but yet he established so many schools. So it's like, there's a lot of interesting things there regarding the legacy, somewhat tarnished of Elijah Muhammad as well. And who is Fard Muhammad, and also future going forward, all kinds of fascinating things. So the Nation of Islam is not what it was, but its influence its influence is way larger than its size. So don't just look at the size only. The influence is it's like how an ant can pick up something stronger or bigger than it is, and it's little. Nation of Islam has quite a amount of influence. And the funny thing is, the more Farrakhan is persecuted in the media, the more people are like, yeah, it's because he's standing up to white supremacy. And so he gains more sympathy from it. It almost works to his advantage. It's a fascinating dynamic that I don't think a lot of people understand. But we can hopefully talk more about that next time. And, well, maybe you'll get some questions we can look at as well. And if we have time and we cover some doctrinal stuff, maybe we could sneak in some stuff about the 5%ers. But I don't know if that'll be possible, but we'll see.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do a couple of shows, like I said. So anyway, thank you so much, brother, for doing this. And like I said, hopefully we can work it out to where you would be with me pretty soon here when we are in our studios, at least live streaming you. And we'll do a panel discussion. We'll make announcements to everybody as soon as I get confirmations from everyone that I've invited, including you. Other than that, is there any last words you want to share with everyone, bud?
I saw one thing. Someone said, are the NOI as bad as Hebrew Israelites? Again, I'm a critic of the NOI, but the NOI's behavior and approach is miles better than the average Hebrew Israelite group's behavior and approach, especially the One West camps, the guys on the corners and stuff. If you talk to a Nation of Islam member out, say, selling the Final Call or something, it's going to be much different experience than talking to a Hebrew Israelite. And in fact, if you want to see something interesting, you can get triggered on all kinds of ways. If you watch one of these videos, watch a video where the Hebrew Israelites go up against Nation of Islam members in the streets. And if you just put this in YouTube, Nation of Islam, Black Hebrew Israelites, and you'll find videos where the Hebrew Israelites are kind of attacking the Nation of Islam. And you'll see the difference of, like, if it's just based upon who's like, usually like who's kind of more chill or whatever, it's the NOI. However, there are rumors that one of the Hebrew Israelites, One West, it's a particular faction, one of their main guys named Abba Bivens was murdered or assaulted in the streets of Jersey by NOI members in the Newark area. Now, there's some debates. There's some who say, no, those were Sunni, but the indications seem to be that they were NOI guys who basically beat him to death. Like, they didn't actually kill him on the street, but he died soon later from his injuries, is my understanding. Abba Bivens was his name, as they called him. And so there's some bad blood there, no pun intended. But again, you're going back to the early 70s when you have that kind of discussion. And it's something a lot of Hebrew Israelites and Nation of Islam members aren't even aware of anyway. But they have some interesting conversations, I'll say that.
Wonderful. Well, brother, as always, thank you so much. We're blessed to have you here, and we appreciate your knowledge and all the information that you share with our viewers. I know a lot of them have been blessed by it, and it's been very educative, as many have indicated that. Hopefully, they will take you up on the offer to go and even check some of these sources. But rest assured, everyone, we will have our brother back again, and maybe even again, just about this topic alone, obviously. And then we want to bring you back just to talk about your upcoming book and the apologetic approach that you are addressing there, which is fascinating to me.
All right. Awesome. Well, I look forward to it, brother. And thanks for having me on and be willing to talk about stuff that's a little bit off the beaten path,
Amen.
And yeah.
Amen. Absolutely. Yes, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for our amazing moderators for all the wonderful work that you do. Thank you for many familiar viewers that some of you, it's been a while since I last saw some of you here, but praise the Lord that Vocab was the catalyst to bring you back again to watch the stream. So with that in mind, brother, thank you. And the Lord bless you. This is Fadi, everyone. God bless you. Over and out.